So I recently had a very nice comment from one of my viewers asking me if I could go into a little bit more in depth on the railing tool in Archicad. This was based off of the 3D site video that I did, where I used the railing tool for creating fences and curb and gutter. Well, what if we were to just design a railing? Hi, welcome back to the Colorblind Architect Does Archicad, and today, like I mentioned in the intro, we're going to base this lesson on one of my viewers' requests, and that is to do a little tutorial on the railing tool. Now, if you're not familiar with the railing tool, this was a tool that was created in Archicad 21. That was the first version that had this particular tool. It came along with the package when the new stair tool that also came in Archicad version 21, and it was a revolutionary change for Archicad, because before that, if you had been using Archicad before version 21, you can know my pain. It was so painful to do stairs and railings. In fact, I would oftentimes use the CAD image stair and rail tools just because the ones native to Archicad before version 21 were just so horrible. But thankfully, Graphisoft listened. They worked hard and they produced a really fantastic set of tools with the stair and rail tool. Now, with that said, I'm going to go ahead first and foremost on the stair options and turn off that stupid headroom because that's annoying me. So I've got a very simple 3D view here. This is floor 1, floor 2. They're just made out of slabs, and then I've got a stair. I don't even care what the construction of them are because we're focusing on railings. And what do railings do? They help protect people from falling. So usually you see them on stairs, you see them on balconies. So that's what we're going to do. Now, obviously, this is just a floating floor. There's no columns even, so I don't even care about that. So to do the railings, we go ahead and select the railing tool, and just to get started, I'm going to just start off with just a basic railing. In this case, just a typical wood balustrade. And if you want to do a stair rail, the easiest way to start is to just use the magic wand. Magic wand, you hold down the space bar and you hover over the stair, and then you just click on it. And voila, you have a stair rail. Now, is this the best stair rail you can do? Well, no, not necessarily. But for right now, that's what we're going to use. Now, for the balcony edges, you can do something similar. You can magic wand it. Of course, the problem with that is once it does build the railing, it's going all the way around and also through where the stair is. And I guess we could see if it allows us to take that off. But sometimes you just have to delete that element and try again. And in this case, we're just going to start here from the top of the stair, and we're going to snap it to the points. Now, as you're watching me do this, you may notice I'm not paying attention to the reference line, and you may notice, oh no, the railing is actually hanging off outside of the edge, the reference line. So to fix that, let's finish this first, because when I close that off and finish it with the hammer, it is going to show that the railing is floating over the air. So let's select that railing, and on the reference line, we're just going to switch that to the opposite side. Voila, that fixes the problem. So, yippee. Now you might be wondering, okay, well, what about intermediate posts? Because this is a very long section of rail, And I'm just going to switch this to white model real quick so that we can see a little bit more clearly, because sometimes it can be a little bit difficult to see with all the textures turned on. Although white model's not necessarily all that much better, so I'm going to go back to the 3D renders page, one. So hopefully you can see that. It's a little bit difficult to see because this floor is also wood, so I'm just going to change this surface to something else, just to make it a little bit more obvious where the railing is. So as you can see, there's no posts in the middle, which is a problem. Now if you go to the settings, the place to fix that would be inner posts. Now in this case, this already says inner posts every 3 foot 3 3/8, which, by the way, if you're wondering, if you're in the US, 3 foot 3 3/8, I think, if I'm not mistaken, that's 1 meter. So for all you international viewers out there, lucky you, you get to use a measuring system that actually makes sense. Now, to my American viewers, yeah, I know, we've got the better system because, you know, feet, inches are awesome, right? Mm-hmm. You can't win either way. So anyways, let's get to how you actually fix this. So the problem isn't that we have a segment length, because I mean, we could change this to like 5 feet. Yeah, it's not going to matter. You're not actually going to see the posts when I click OK. What you actually have to do is you need to edit the segments. Now, if we want to do it globally, we can edit the segment by going to this segment section of the railing selection settings. And then under this, you'll notice under the segment pattern settings, it will say pattern distribution and position. Now, these are grayed out. Why? I'm not sure. I can honestly say I really don't know why, but I do know how to fix it in a separate section. So let's click on OK, get out of that, and we're going to, while having this railing still selected, we're going to click on the edit that's floating out there in the space. Now, to edit that specific segment, we need to turn on the segments. Now you might notice that the segment's a little bit hard to select when you do that. So a lot of times what you can do is you can just turn off everything else, and that leaves only the segments. That way you can more easily select it. Now unfortunately, sometimes my mouse likes to be a little bit aggressive in selecting and starts dragging at the same time, so I have to hit escape. Thankfully, with the new MacBook Pro, I have an escape key, unlike my old MacBook Pro that had the touch bar, which I had to hit like a little touch screen version of the escape key, which sucked. So now I have a big, huge escape key, and it's marvelous. Now, on this segment, now that we've got that selected, you can see this pattern distribution in the info bar. And by the way, by default, this info bar actually looks like this. It's up here in the top, and it's usually a lot more linear. Just so you know, I like to grab this, and I like it to throw it here, because it just works better there. And I'm also going to turn off that trace reference for now. Okay. And I'm also going to turn off this renovation palette for now. So we've got the info bar here, and then down here under pattern distribution, it says number. Well, we could change the number, and that will distribute those, or you can do a pattern length, or you can do best division. I usually like to choose best division and then say what the division should be, 5 feet. That way it will kind of automatically spread them out, because if you just do the pattern length, sometimes you end up with like 5 feet, 5 feet, 5 feet, 5 feet, and then like the last one's only 1 foot, and it looks really dumb. We can try that just for sake of argument. Turn on the inner posts so you can see them and where they are. Don't know why they're not showing. Maybe the settings need to be fixed, and we need to add an inner post. Yeah, that would help. Yeah, maybe that's why it wasn't showing up before. But as you can see, if it's just 5 feet, it doesn't necessarily create an even 5 feet all the way across. It has 5 feet on all of these, but the ends end up being a little bit goofy. So that's why I usually like best division. But in this case, it's regenning. Yay! And as you can see, that's a little bit more even of a post distribution. Now, obviously for the posts, you may want to actually select one to match the others. In this case, it might be a newel post. We'll get into that. So finally, we can go ahead and hit exit mode, exit the edit mode. And as you can see, we've got our newel posts in the intermediate. And oh, these corner posts are different. Yes, exactly. So let's select this railing again, go back into the settings. Now, for the corner posts, these are typically, starting and corner posts are under the node and post section. And this is where you can go through, change some of your settings. I'm going to go ahead and just go with built-in post for now, because I want the default settings for the newel post, because that's what I have on the intermediate posts. And of course, being in 3D, sometimes it takes a little bit longer. So that was a favorite already in there, so I clicked on that. So I'm just going to go ahead and click OK. And now you'll see the corner now looks the same. Now you can repeat that on the others. And now earlier I said I didn't know why it wasn't letting me set the segments. I think I know now why. If we go to the inner posts, because we do have an inner posts turned on, or at least we did, and that was the newel post, and we're setting that at 5 feet for the global settings for this rail, not just this segment. And if we click OK, now we should see some additional posts, but you may notice it's probably going to show up wrong. Yep. And you see it only added like one post there, and so it's kind of goofy. So this is probably infuriating to you if you don't know how to do these things. So this is where you go back into the settings, and on the segment, we need to set this. Now that we have an inner post defined, it has now unlocked the divide segment. Now we'll go to best division, and we're going to set this to 5 feet. We're going to click OK, and if I'm not mistaken, this we will finally see the inner posts showing up like the other segment, and there we go. Now we have that. So that's how you deal with segments. Now, you might be wondering, okay, what about handrails? Now, in the United States, we have guardrails and handrails. We have to have both on our stairs because the guardrail is at 42 inches on a commercial project, and that is to prevent people from falling over. But the handrail is set at 36 inches. The handrail also has to be continuous. You can't have a bunch of things blocking it. So typically your handrail is going to come up from underneath with the brackets, so that as you're running your hand across the top of the bracket of the handrail, you have a smooth, continuous path that you can hold on to. This is important, obviously, for people with limited mobility. Personally, I broke my foot earlier this summer, so I had a good crash course into experiencing what life is like being handicapped. Now I'm doing much better. I've recovered from it. I'm back to running. Doesn't look like it with as fat as I am, but I am running again. And so I don't need it as much as I did, but I can really appreciate those handrails because that was a lifesaver for me during that time period. So it's important to remember as architects, we're not just designing for able-bodied people, we're designing for everyone. And that includes you if you're stupid enough like me to break your foot. So let's see what that looks like. So in this case, we have a guardrail. We're going to go to the settings, and the height for the guardrail needs to be, like I said, 42 inches or 3.5 feet. And what that is in meters, I think it's like 1.1 meters, somewhere around there. Doesn't really matter if you're in the United States, because we only use meters to make high school students mad at their chemistry teacher. So that's a joke, people. Okay, so so we set that at 3'6". Now we go to our top rail settings. Now your top rail settings, this is where we can define where it is relative to the segment. We can choose built-in rail or regular rail, a pig air rail, or a profiled rail. Now remember, complex profiles, this is where you can make your rails your own design, which can be a lot of fun. I'm just going to go with the built-in rail, set it as a circle, as 3 inches. Why? Just because, why not? I don't even care about the building material. Now you can do the building material here. You can go to the next page and you can change some other settings like your graphics. You can go to your 3D representation, and here you have the building material again. Yay. But here's where you need to be careful. You can also override the surface here by clicking here, and you'll find that you can change the surface material. So now, where would this be helpful? Maybe if you're lazy and you don't want to have like a ton of building materials. Yeah. Ideally, what you should do is you should have a surface material for every material that you're going to be using in 3D components like the railings. But in this case, you know, maybe you want it to show as steel in the section, but in your model you just want to paint it, you know, a particular color, you know, that's why. But this is why you have to be careful. Sometimes you can be really frustrated if you're looking at a railing that you've created and it's showing as one material but a different surface material, and you're like, why is this happening? Well, this is why. This is where you change that. Same thing applies for your other rails. And so I'm just going to turn that off for now. So here's where we go to the handrails. Now this particular railing already has a handrail set. And as you can see, the handrail is set to 3 feet. Now, at least in the United States, I don't know about other countries, but the handrail is measured from the nosing of the stair vertically. So you go to the nosing of the stair up 3 feet. That is where the railing has to be by code. It's actually technically 34 to 30, no, I think it's 34 to 38 inches, but 36 inches is right in the middle, so that's where I set it, so that I give my contractor as much chance to get it right as possible, because you don't want to be right close to the edge, because if you're right close to the edge, you could draw a code violation, and then they have to tear it out and rebuild it, and that's a pain for everybody. So let's try to be as middle of the road as we can when it comes to code compliance, just so that we don't have to worry about it. All right, so on the handrails, this one, you can set different railings again, built-in rail, rail 25, profiled rail 25. Obviously, I'm in Archicad 25 for this. So however you want to set that, you can set the rails on both sides of it. This could be good if you're doing like a guardrail that's in a large stair that you know, at an arena where you've got intermediate rails along a large stair section that's conveying many people, or you can set the side of the profile that you want the railing to go. Then under style and difference, this is where you can choose a bunch of different options. You can set your sizes, you can set your building materials, you can also set your fixings. You probably do want a fixing if it's a handrail. But sometimes you don't, just because you don't want to muddy up the 3D model. And then you go to your next page. This is where you edit your fixings. There's different fixing types. You can set your plates, your railing plates, wall plates, different materials for those, the sizes of them, tons of different settings. Fixing distribution. This is where you probably have to get into the weeds to make sure it's actually lining up with your intermediate posts, your inner posts, right? So that's also a really important detail if you're going to actually model in the fixings. And then, of course, your 2D and 3D representations. Let's move on to your regular rails. Now, your regular rails are going to be more important if you're doing horizontal bar rails. For example, if you go to your favorites, which you always have to go to the parent railing settings if you want to go to the full favorites, because in the railings you can set favorites for the overall railing, but you can also set favorites for subcomponents. And so in this case, let's say you want something with some horizontal rail, like a cable rail. I'm going to just double click that and make that the default. And now you can see the rails. There's a bunch of them in there, and each one has a height above the absolute, which is the 0 for the rail. 0 for the rail is either the nosing of the stair or the floor on which this is setting, or in the case of 3D site work, if you're doing a fence, the 0 would be the top of the mesh where you're attaching the point. So again, just like the other rails, there's a bunch of different options for which railing types and very similar types of settings within that. Then you get to inner posts. Inner posts, obviously you need supports. You can't just have an infinitely long railing without any kind of support posts because, gravity. So this is where you can set those. There's a bunch of different options for types of posts. There's also profiled posts, there's revolved posts, there's cast iron posts. So many different options. You've got to play with these. I don't have enough time to go over this right now, so just to say there's a lot of options there. Finally, well, not finally, now we're going to move on to balusters. So balusters don't apply to a horizontal cable rail system, so that's where we had that prior railing design, which was this wood balustrade. And that one has the vertical balusters, right? And with this one, similarly, you set your separation distance. In this case, 4 1/4 is the equally distribute pattern. You can set, how high you want these from the segment bottom to segment top. By the way, if you have intermediate rails, like for example, I can add a rail right here, then I can go back to the balusters and I can actually set it to either go to the segment bottom or I can go to the rail. So that's one of the ways you can control the railings. Now, you move on to panels. This is where you get into things where you can do your your steel mesh grids or your glass rails, and create some really cool railings. So I've got a favorite in here already for a framed glass panel. So we're just going to choose that so you can see what those look like. In that case, instead of balusters, you're going to see these panels, and then you can go to the railing panel settings. There's wall panels, there's built-in panels. There's all kinds of settings underneath here. There's fixings, which are the little hold-offs that hold it to the inner posts. So lots of different options there. And same thing, just you can spend weeks learning all these features. So now let's go on to the nodes. Nodes are basically what defines the end points of rails and also the corner points of rails, and also the inflection points on a stair or a ramp where you're changing from a slope of the stair or ramp to a horizontal plane like a floor. And so there's different options on how you can set your connection offsets. For the number of posts and offset, this is if you want no post in the corner and you just want you want them close by, or just a simple corner post, or you want 3 posts. There's all kinds of different options here. Pattern continuity. So these are ones that you have to play around with to really figure out what they do and how they work. I could go into these, but it's typically I just leave it on the corner post because that's the most common configuration that I use. For posts, like I said, these are the end posts and the corner posts. So this is where you'd go in this case, I'm just going to choose the newel post just to keep it simple. Connections. This is where, for example, on a handrail, it has to be continuous by code in the United States. So this is where you set whether you want it to be broken or if you want it to do like goosenecks or a continuous connection. You can set radiuses, and yeah, there's so much you can do there. This is also where on a handrail, because in the United States, a handrail at a stair, it needs to continue, well, or at least in most jurisdictions in the United States, the handrail needs to continue at least 1 tread depth beyond the bottom of the stair in the direction of travel. So it's typically diagonal. Now, of course, at the bottom, some jurisdictions require it to actually go horizontal at the bottom. In the United States, typically at the top, you do have to go at least 12 inches beyond the top nosing of the stair in a horizontal path in the path of travel. So that's where that one goes. And then this is where you get into ends, where you can define those extensions for the handrails. So you would go to your handrail settings. Now note, edit settings for. You can edit this for the top rail. If the top rail is your handrail, like it would be in a residential project, then yeah, you can do that. But your handrail, that's the one that's code required, right? So, and in the case of, for example, sometimes you need this kind of ending because it needs to do that extension past the stair, but then it needs to drop down at least 12 inches and then return 12 inches. But sometimes you just want it to go to the floor, and in this case you would choose this option, and instead of this you would actually change it to dropping it to, oh gosh, which one was it? I think it's this one. Oh, there you go, turn down. It's the first option. And then you can either set it to a 90-degree angle to the path of the stair or just perpendicular. And then I usually choose go to the floor, but sometimes you have to manually set that, and you can adjust how long that is. So this is how you can get that code compliance that you need. Also set your radius for that turn and also the length of the extension. There's also the wraparound and also just the straight out. So there's so many different options on how you can do these, and to be quite honest, half an hour is not enough time for me to go through every aspect of railings. Hopefully this has been helpful. Hopefully it hasn't been totally mind-numbing. Again, you can spend weeks learning the railing tool in Archicad. It is highly complex and just so much to learn there. But a lot of it is just getting in there, playing with the different settings, trying them out. And so if you have any tips or pointers that you have, add them to the comments below. I'd love to see those. And also, if you have any links to other videos of railing tutorials that you would like to share, I know that Eric Bobro has a great one, and so if there's any others that you're aware of, I'd love to hear about them and watch them myself, because we can all learn more about this tool, because it is an amazingly complex tool, but it does some really great things for us as architects by simplifying our documentation, reducing the number of two-dimensional details that we have to draw by making it a three-dimensional thing. Then all we have to do is cut the section for the detail, add the dimensions, add the notes, and then you're done. which saves you so much time and allows you to do more of the fun work, which is, of course, the design. And that's what we're after, right? That's why we use Archicad. It's so that we can spend more time doing the things that we love, which is design, and less time doing the things that we don't love, which is menial, tedious 2D drafting that just takes forever, and then anytime there's a change, you have to go back and change it. So, anyways, hopefully this was helpful. I'm the colorblind architect that does Archicad. Wow, I mangled that, didn't I? I'm the colorblind architect doing Archicad. Peace out.